it would become almost like malpractice or wrong not to share this information with people. There's a big study out of Johns Hopkins that's kind of shed light, the research on MDMA, the research on psilocybin. It's hard to avoid seeing these amazing outcomes.
You don't have to be sick to access this medicine to reap the benefits, right? Because mushrooms don't go in and discriminate against myself and you, Regan, or you, Jeremy. They benefit people neurologically, physiologically, and if you're looking for it, spiritually.
From a medical standpoint, from a clinical standpoint, the indications are impressive. PTSD, refractory depression, anxiety, persistent anxiety disorder. There's some studies with suicide and suicidality. There's even the mouse study showing improvement in longevity markers and reversal of biologic clocks.
I took some diagnostics, brain scans, blood work before I left. And then 6 months after, 2 high doses, specific washout period of 3 weeks, 5 days on, 2 days off of a microdose. I got my brain scans back with no abnormalities. And then my blood work was completely clear.
Welcome, Dr. Jeremy Stich and Daniel Carcillo. Did I pronounce your last name? I just butchered it.
Butchered it.
It looked Italian. I was like, Carcillo.
You said it with the CH. You're right. You saw the vowel. But so either Carcillo or Carcillo. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said it right.
You can just call me Car Bomb. That's what the guys in the room makes it a little bit easier.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited to talk about this whole world of psychedelics. There's a lot of things that we've shared on the show over the years, as far as like the benefits of psychedelics and how they can transform people's ability to heal and move forward, not just from mental illness, but from a complete transformation in their physical body too. But you know. Let's start with you, Jeremy. But if you look at some of the science and evidence behind the use of like psilocybin or ketamine, what's some of the data that you lean on when it comes to the clinical side of this operation?
I mean, I think it's really it would become almost like malpractice or wrong not to share this information with people. There was historically, obviously there's this whole backlog of the promise, really good research out of the 60s. It essentially got suppressed. The pharmaceutical companies and big pharma didn't really know what to do with a medicine that could help somebody achieve cure in one dose, right? It completely disrupts the industry. So in the last, 15 years, we've seen some fantastic results. There's a big study out of Johns Hopkins that's kind of shed light on everybody's outlook and saying like there's really no difference in the perceived spiritual enlightenment and the use of the psychedelics. I believe that one was LSD. And then sort of looking forward, the research on MDMA, the research on psilocybin, it's hard to avoid seeing these amazing outcomes. Just 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was reading a meta-analysis looking at the LSD research that showed resolution of anxiety. And what was it, Danny, like 40% of enrollments, like resolution, right?
Mm. Yeah, generalized anxiety, low dose LSD with MindMed phase 2 with the FDA.
Wow. Yeah, it was nuts. So it's hard to ignore. It's very, very promising. It's also very young. It's very new. So that leads to almost like another renaissance, right? What you had in the 60s is now coming in a slightly more controlled environment of like, how do we bring this to the public's attention and introduce it in a safe way? So I think from a medical standpoint, from a clinical standpoint, the indications are impressive. PTSD, refractory depression, anxiety, persistent anxiety disorder. There's some studies with suicide and suicidality. There's even the mouse study showing improvement in longevity markers and reversal of biologic clocks. So for the biohackers out there, and for the folks, the curious folks like us, we're starting to scratch our heads like, hey, wait, could this be a reset for our software system? Could this actually help us reprogram?
Mm. And Daniel, tell me about, you've launched this center. I mean, the people you want to help are people who've had a lot of depression, anxiety, PTSD, but the big one is the traumatic brain injury. So maybe you could share your story on how you entered into this world and your career as an athlete.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I was lucky enough and worked hard enough to spend 10 years in the NHL. Ended up winning 2 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks along that time, fought 164 times, 7 diagnosed concussions, and was forced into early retirement because of the symptoms associated with those concussions. And, I'm young enough to know a time where we were hitting at 4 years old. I grew up in Canada. It was just different when, we just didn't have this type of information as far as moving the hitting ages back and the risks associated with traumatic brain injury and the subsequent symptoms. And studies were just starting to come out. The 2013 lawsuit with the NFL had just come out, and guys were starting to pay attention to it. So I'd made a decision to walk away at the age of 30. And then the real fight started because I started to go through the medical system, and concussion, along with the symptoms, it's all cash pay. And so even though I was representing myself as somebody that was dealing with slurred speech, headache, head pressure, like brain fatigue, brain fog, when I was getting prescribed pharmaceuticals, it would exacerbate other symptoms. So I did that for about 2 years, came off of a whole host of cocktails, had a few seizures, and was actually in a worse place in 2017. But then I started to go to stroke rehabilitation centers, and I will preface all of this with I had all the means in the world to get the best care, and I was still suffering. And so it was 2019. I'd spent about $500,000 of my own money at these cash pay stroke rehabilitation concussion clinics, but I got a really great education, right, on the brain and diagnostics and then I was reading PubMed papers. So I saw a study out of the Imperial College of London of a person under fMRI, placebo brain, and then a brain when they were on, I'll just say mushrooms because I don't want the algorithm to block any of this on social media. And what I saw were the brain connections, this communication of right and left brain hemispheres communicating like never seen before. And then I dove into the anti-inflammatory biomarkers pre and post, and I said, wow, I'm an athlete. So flush inflammation, you'll feel pretty good, right? Guard yourself against pain. And so I went and partook in it. Currently, or at that time in 2019, the only state that was decriminalized, you could access this without fear of prosecution, was Denver, was Colorado. So I took some diagnostics.
Was it Colorado or was it Oregon at that time?
No, it was Colorado. Yeah, it was a whole state.
Oh,
of
I
Colorado.
didn't realize that.
Colorado.
Yeah,
Was
I thought Oregon was first.
Oregon was the first adult therapeutic use program that was passed by the ballot measure in 2020. But yeah, the Colorado was kind of the first that decriminalized and is still decriminalized across the whole state. And so you can grow, gather, and gift. That's the type of model that a decrim allows people. And people will still get arrested, right? If you're going around selling mushrooms, etc. Sure. But if you're growing, gathering, and gifting, cops might not know about it. Once it brings it to the DA, that they just won't prosecute. They'll let you go in a decriminalized state or city. So I took some diagnostics, brain scans, blood work before I left. And then 6 months after, 2 high doses, specific washout period of 3 weeks, 5 days on, 2 days off of a microdose, along with, this isn't a magic bullet, but along with nutrition and diet and exercise, mindfulness practices like high heat sauna and cold plunge. I got my brain scans back with no abnormalities. And then my blood work was completely clear. And even though it might not sound like this, back in 2019, the studies were just starting to come out, right? So my neurologists had no idea what to do with this, which is why I took these scans, right? To Jeremy's point, the Nixon's war on drugs really hindered research. Yeah, and I've been in the industry ever since. I've been a concussion advocate, mental health advocate, and mushroom advocate, if you want to call me that. I've helped just raise awareness for these ballot measures. Now there's 2 adult therapeutic use states, Oregon and Colorado, where adults can go and partake in this legally in the United States, where there's tested medicine, people that are trained to sit with you, service centers that can actually legally administer it. So it's a really exciting time, and there's over 134 FDA approved clinical trials right now with psilocybin, treating over 50 different indications, like one substance treating 50. So I think it speaks to getting to the spiritual maladies that are underlying some of these diagnoses, right, of depression and anxiety, and people are on top of the neurological benefits and the neuroplasticity and opening up these kind of critical windows of relearning or being able to create new habits. It's just a really exciting time to be in this industry.
So, I mean, the biggest change for you, looking back, it's been 2019 is when you had your first experience.
Mm-hmm.
And 2025, at the time of this recording, what's been the biggest breakthrough you've noticed?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just made a post because so Theraspil in Canada is a patient advocacy group that's petitioned the government. It's a Schedule 3 there, a little bit different, but they've just launched the first in-human Health Canada approved study for well people. So I always say, like, you don't have to be sick to access this medicine to reap the benefits, right? Because mushrooms don't go in and discriminate against myself and you, Regan, or you, Jeremy. They benefit people neurologically, physiologically, and if you're looking for it, spiritually. So I would say the biggest benefits, I had about 80% symptom reduction within 6 months. I'd say, and I was a really bad case. I'd say after a year, no symptoms. I've been symptom free since probably the summer of 2020. And now I use this because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a father of 4 with 1 on the way. Life doesn't stop. Stress, self-limiting beliefs, fear, wanting to sleep well, guarding against Alzheimer's that my grandmother passed away from, runs in my family, 80% more susceptible to neurodegenerative disease after 3 concussions. So, I just continue to flush neuroinflation, use this medicine in high and low doses. And then I really like it because it just makes me really a really aware and present person. And I don't avoid things, and I meet them head on. And it's got a unique ability to help you get out of your own way, in a sense. So,
I've seen so many benefits in friends and clients who have gone down this road, and even colleagues. I mean, we had a couple of the team members here at the company share their experience, and it was really profound. So. It takes a lot of courage to enter into this pathway, but to your point, Jeremy shared a lot of the data around it and the science. The more that we dive into it, the more we realize what we don't know. And so this is where mapping out these pathways. I mean, pleiotropic is, I think of psilocybin as like 50 different indications, 130. How many FDA approved? 132?
130 plus, yeah. And then 2 FDA breakthrough therapy designations, one with Compass Pathway, who's in phase 3 with the FDA for treatment-resistant depression, over a 50% remission rate. And then major depressive disorder with USONA, who's just finishing up phase 2.
Man, love that. Jeremy, what would you, you've had experience personally with this, and if you'd like to share, that'd be awesome. But what would you say is going on? What's the biggest mechanism of action that you've been able to identify with mushrooms?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that really touches on what Danny was explaining before. We have a body, and then we have a mind, right? And then there's this third thing that people call by different names, right? Is it your consciousness? Is it your spirit? Is it your soul? Like, is it your energy body? Like, who the heck knows? And we're not here to argue it, right? But we do know that things that we can't measure are real, like thoughts are a really good example of that, right? They're certainly present. They're certainly real. They certainly affect our body. They turn on and off epigenetics. You can upregulate 500 different genes by meditating. And it's that thing that often is like the unaddressed problem. It's like the elephant in the room when you go see a doctor. Nobody asks somebody like, how are you spiritually doing? Or how, like, what is your contentment with life? You know, and it's an important driver. Like, without that thing, we're just kind of walking around having these like random experiences. So what I've witnessed is that this allows a person, in addition to the mechanisms of, getting out of what's called the default mode network and getting out of your way, and the neuroplasticity, it addresses that. It forces somebody to sort of do a little bit of reflection and say, like, how have I maybe contributed to this state in a very non-judgmental, a very objective way? And you can like see it from a third person perspective. It's almost as though you're like looking at your life or looking at your belief systems in some cases, which can be pretty weird. And saying, okay, how did this get me here? So I'll tell a couple stories. The first one will be, my eye-opening experience about what I saw as a clinician, and then my own. So the first one, I was working on a lady who eventually became a friend of mine, and his friend's wife. We all actually became friends. We did these super deep dives, like going down genetic pathways, looking at these exhaustive panels. And she was dealing with this thing that we just couldn't figure out. She had like persistent inflammation. We did all the normal things. She went to the dentist. She got her fillings out, like looked for chronic infections, like nothing was working. And her homocysteine was high. So she had this methylation problem. And we were looking at the genetics. So we knew like these are the things you need nutritionally and genetically and supplemental from a supplement standpoint. None of it was working. Her numbers were the same. She goes and does this psychedelic journey and came back. And one, you immediately noticed her complexion was better. She had a piece about her that is difficult to put into words. But then two, the part, those are subjective, right? But the part you couldn't deny as the clinician who's, sort of at the top of my game, trying to get these numbers down. And all of a sudden, like, homocysteine normalizes and CRP goes down and all the inflammatory markers go away. And her kind of like, mediocre autoimmune markers were like normal. That's a head scratcher, right? That makes you pay attention because it's not just somebody's report and their countenance looks better. It was totally objective data. And I had to look objectively, like as clinicians, we have a choice when we have those watershed moments. You either deny it and kind of go back to the traditional data, or you look deeper. And I looked deeper. After seeing that, she told me about her experience. She said, I went back and I had these two things that happened that I was able to address. They were miscarriages. I never mourned them, and I mourned them like for the first time in my adult life. And it felt like this release. And I was like, gosh, there's something to this, which drew me then back to the research. And I started looking at the data. I started looking at ketamine. I started looking at mushrooms. And I was like, gosh, like, it's pretty legitimate. I read Michael Pollan's book, like How to Change Your Mind. If you haven't read that, I'm not paid by him, but holy crap, it's a good read.
It is.
And it's a great history too. So, it inspired me to do it, to have an experience for myself. And, I won't go into the gritty details, but like I was raised in a very fundamental, pretty fundamental Christian environment. I had this experience as though I was like seeing life through the characters and the people that was in real time, feeling the feelings that they felt. And I was like confused as hell when I got out of it. I was like, holy crap, am I Jesus? Am I John? Like, who the hell was I? I'm like, no, no, no. What it was, after a lot of introspection, is like I had so colored my life to look through that lens that I was putting so much pressure on myself of being perfect, of not sinning, that it was tainting. Like, it was, that thought process was getting in the way of my relationships.
Mm.
And so, what do I know about myself? I do the work, right? I'd done my genetics. I'd run my labs. I've done, we dabble and we biohack all the stuff, but like I had a propensity for blood pressure dysregulation, a propensity to hold on to stress. And in high stress, high allostatic load moments, I tend to go into that fight or flight. Where I held it, like I held it in my neck. I had high blood pressure because of it. And these experiences like opened my mind and started making me think like, why? And that wasn't the thing that fixed my blood pressure. I won't go that far, but it made me start being curious. And it is what led to some of the other discoveries and some of the other things that did fix the problem. Long term, I'm not on blood pressure medicine anymore. So these moments, like, they're intensely personal. They require like a really thoughtful attitude, but you don't have to go that deep either. You can also just do it for the neuroplasticity and for the anti-inflammatory benefit. Yeah, so very, very long-winded explanation. Let's go back to the mechanism. I try to keep things as simple as I can. And you have neuronal recruitment, you have new insights and objectivity, and then you have this thing called the default mode network. And the three of us know this, but for our audience, the default mode network means the neurons that fire together wire together. So those pathways that are well run, that are very, very frequently used. So a good example is like if I have a fear of speaking in public, I'm going to avoid it, and it's going to activate my flight and fight response every time, right? That's a default mode network, right? So every time I'm asked to speak or raise my hand in class or share my insight or a personal story, that fires. And the ability to temporarily step away from that so you don't run down that well-trodden path and you actually use the full network of nerves that we've been given and been granted is a unique opportunity to get out of one's own way and to rewire your body. So I think of it as like, this is the hardware, this is the physical body, the brain is the interface, and the mind is the software. And you activate the mind, you get about 10 to 20% recruitment, maybe more based on recent studies of extra neurons, right? So you're recruiting more, and then you're sort of reprogramming the software. And hopefully you do it in a way that's introspective and, not just fun, but also really thoughtful to say like, how can I maybe use the full spectrum of this body that I'm given and then reprogram it.
Wow. And I think this goes back to if both of you, Danny and Jeremy, if you looked at your life and you look before finding this opportunity, this pathway, how much different would your lives be? My life included. I mean, that's and I think this goes into this the Experience Onward Healing Center in Colorado that you guys that I want to talk about, because if this medicine is more readily available, think about the suffering that can be ended, and think about where your lives would be without it. I think it's something that we shouldn't take lightly. And so maybe let's talk a little bit about this, the flagship center, you guys. So Colorado and Oregon. Is there a center in Oregon, or is there a place that you're working with right now?
My daughter's there. There's a little background. Oh, nice. Okay. Gotcha.
Huge.
So yeah, no, appreciate you asking. To the first question, like, I don't think I would be here. I really don't. I was making active plans to leave this world, because I didn't have any hope, and I had spent a lot of money and a lot of time, years, trying to find a way out, and trying to heal. So, I've been, granted, it feels like a second chance, and I was very stuck in what I thought was advocacy work. But really, if I look back on it, granted, I was suffering from a lot of symptoms, but I view my time when I first retired as searching, but also stuck in this victimhood mindset of blaming the NHL about the situation that I was in. When I think of it objectively, and I like to simplify things too, hey man, like in this ceremony, it was like, you didn't think that getting hit in the head was going to result in some bad things? Like, did you need a league to tell you that? Can you let it go? Can you move on?
Wow.
And then I did this kind of pros and cons list after, and the things that hockey gave me, now it's sport, and I don't even like saying gave me, that I earned, right? Because I gave up my childhood, right? The stuff I went through, normal men, just normal teenagers wouldn't handle, and guys fall. And so, and then I'm really proud of who I am, right? But I couldn't see that before. When I was sick, I was very dark place. And so, I spiritually needed to, in transition, I describe it as being, I was Daniel player, it was Daniel that played hockey. Sometimes that gets, the lines got blurred. So when I got better, and I know this might sound weird, but when you're in these ceremonies, in these high dose ceremonies, if you choose to go into it therapeutically, like I did, then you can actually talk to this medicine, and you can ask it questions. You can ask it to show you a different way. You can ask it to be a little bit more gentle, which I did, because when I went and did it, there wasn't much preparation, which thank gosh, I've had 15 years of talk therapy beforehand. So and I like things the hard way. Like, just tell me the truth. Don't beat around the bush. Tell me how I can improve my life. And so for the first 2 hours, it exasperated what was at the forefront of my mind, which was these suicidal ideations and these really painful things. And then about an hour and a half in, it spoke to me and said, hey, we can help heal your brain. But you have to promise, and you have to make a contract right now. You have to provide access for other people. And I said yes. And then all of a sudden, that difficult moment, because there can be difficult moments in these ceremonies, lifted. And for the first time in 34 years, I felt like a child, like she was just talking to me. Like when I hug her, you feel that unconditional love, you feel enveloped. And that's really where I felt like it just started kind of working on these different areas of my brain and my body. And so that's what I've been doing, to your question, is providing access. So I started a drug development program, and we got to a pre-IND meeting with the FDA. We were developing a low dose psilocybin that could live on your counter in a locked enclosure system. Sold that to a NASDAQ listed company. And then we wanted to learn about the delivery of the medicine. So we had psychiatrist led clinics that were inclusive of ketamine, which is kind of the first, it's not a classic psychedelic, but it works well for treatment resistant. It's a really good tool, and for major depressive disorder. So we had 3 clinics, built that up to 5, sold that. And then now just getting back to kind of why I think I'm here, which is a really nice thing. It's just to go through this stuff, earn a platform, and then use the platform to advocate for this natural medicine, which is personalized natural medicine, because we can test it. Like, we don't give anybody a mushroom without knowing the actives and the different tryptamines and alkaloids. And that's a whole another discussion. But, and so we advocate, we got them on the bills. in Oregon was the first one that was passed, adult therapeutic use, and then just recently Colorado. And we have, we're establishing a wellness community. Really happy to be working with Jeremy and bring his knowledge base into this. Because it's really, yes, we talk about it therapeutically, and yes, of course, it can help 50 to 80% of people that take this for depression, for anxiety. But I'm really looking at it from a different lens of how can this help somebody live better? Because this is not a magic bullet. And yes, the studies are phenomenal, and the results are phenomenal, never seen before. But really, what's gonna pull the trigger is your lifestyle, right? Is are you in a community that can help support you with nutrition and with mindfulness practices and with like creating these habits that are going to sustain you for the longer period of time? Can stem cells work? Can peptides work? Are there other things that we need to include into somebody's life to help them live well? So, but we are legal. We in Oregon and in Colorado, you can legally take this medicine and know that you're entering into a program where you're going to prepare for hours, and then you're going to be held during the experience. And then you are going to be a part of a community that can help you integrate what you saw, because some of these experiences can be intense, and people need time, right? It's not like the answers are right there. So that's what we're creating. We're creating this kind of ecosystem that can help people transform if they want to.
And the community side of it, I think some of the benefits is when someone else has a breakthrough, it also helps you. That's what I've experienced in my own personal life. Is the healing is never done alone. Yes, I've had profound experiences alone, but the real healing is when you create a community. And let's talk about some of the how some of the medicines align. I mean, if you bring stem cells into the world of psilocybin or peptides, what outcomes are you expecting, or how do you look at this, Jeremy, through a medical lens?
We only have experience right now, experiential data, because nobody's studying stem cells and psilocybin or mushrooms together, right? It's anecdotal, but a lot of the people who are pursuing this are also biohacking or optimizing their life in other ways. And what we noticed is there are foundational level changes, right? Foundational level changes exist at the level of changing the way that you operate. We get rid of toxins in our environment. We start exercising every day. We start eating real food, like stuff that's close to the source. Those are foundational level changes. I would think of like these kinds of experience as a foundational level experience. And then on the other hand, you have accelerants. So accelerants are little tools that can maybe take a journey that would have taken 6 months or 18 months and cut it down by 50%. That's where we get into some of these things. So for like the concussion, Danny, I don't remember everything that you've done before, but like when you receive stem cells pre-psychedelic therapy, there's still a whole lot of inflammation, and those stem cells go to work and they fix the inflammation, but they don't necessarily do the reprogramming that fixes it at a root cause level, right? When you've addressed that, when you've cleaned up the system and you start using things like, okay, let's use this concussion and roll with it. All of a sudden, those stem cells become much, much more effective at stabilizing what are called the dendritic extensions of the cells, and all of the name of the cell is escaping me, but all the supporting satellite cells that support and nourish the neurons, right? And that's really what we need. I think they're like oligocytes, but the difference, right, in those two things is night and day. One is fixing inflammation, and one is nurturing and supporting a new, healthier cellular network.
Yeah.
Another good example would be like diabetes. You got somebody who's, unfortunately, sometimes even unwittingly fallen into the standard American lifestyle and standard American diet. We call it the SAD diet and the SAD lifestyle. They have no idea. And then all of a sudden they get shown like the inside of their arteries and why they can't feel their toes anymore quite the same as they used to. And you might see this stuff like in a hallucination or in a revelation. And then what do you do with it? And that's where these stacks can be helpful. So some of the unique things that we do at this center, I'll let Danny go into more details, but we have like preparatory protocols that we can help people. Like Danny had this great idea of like, let's give people a little bit of the medicine right when they get there so they don't have the stigma and they don't have the fear associated with it. Brilliant idea. Precursors. If somebody opts in, you can also do like, you can run the tests and get a whole battery of tests. You can do it from your home weeks before and then a couple weeks afterwards and see the before and after. And sometimes that uncovers things. So you get like a protocol for yourself. It says, hey, unique to you, you might be suffering from these things. Here's some suggestions and here's some peptides that would help you along the way. Here's some supplement recommendations. Here's some major lifestyle recommendations, like some simple things like when to eat, when not to eat.
Yeah.
Those are the ancillary tools that accelerate the journey.
Well, and it's that's what helps it last too. I mean, the physiology is so powerful and no different than what we do, with FMT, clear out, remove anything that's going to interfere with the signaling. And so when you can use mushrooms or any kind of plant medicine to open up the receptors, and now you have these little stem cells, these intelligent factories are going to turn on a lot more genetic signaling. Same with the peptides. I mean, brilliant. Danny, what else is going to happen at this center? And tell us when it's going to open, because I think this is it just seems like a really good match.
Yeah, so we've been open for a year in Oregon, and we are on the search for our flagship center in Colorado. But in lieu of that, if people want to go to Colorado, we have partnerships with other service centers, and so we're actively connecting people. We should have something, as Jeremy mentioned, opened as a flagship center, the first legal retreat in the United States that can serve psilocybin with an overnight stay. Oregon's laws don't allow for that. You have to do this in an urban setting in an office. And that's traditionally not how people experience this, through a retreat style. So it's really exciting. As Jeremy mentioned, we'll have diagnostics there. When you get there, it is Colorado. So we'll hydrate people with IVs and we'll have a little bit of a heart opening ceremony for the first night and kind of remove that layer of nervous energy. Typically when people take low doses of this medicine and they boost mood and attention and focus, and they laugh a little bit longer at jokes, and they're looking at an awe-inspiring mountainscape or landscape, then they're immediately out of their own head. I think that's one of the bigger reasons also of why this works, because so many of the things that personally I was suffering from were just rumination, constant rumination that I just could not, with exercise and other tools, break. And I needed that help. So yeah, we're building the foundation right now. It's exciting to be able to move into a space with someone like Jeremy, where we're talking about a natural, like personalized program for each individual, because I think that is what's needed, right? I need to really listen to what Regan is saying. And then I need to really understand as a facilitator, before I give you this medicine, what has happened in the past. And then mainly, what is your reason for being here or intention? So set the mindset, and then I'll create the setting. I'll create the environment for which all of us are us because of the environments which we grew up in. I'll create an environment conducive for you to let go and shift. So it's and it's legal. and we have tested medicine, and people that are trained to be able to do this, and it's just, it's really exciting.
It's so powerful. And so for those of you who want to learn more, go to Experience Onward. And just in closing, this is life changing. I really appreciate you both going down this journey. It's not easy, and there's a lot to overcome. But the other side of it, that healing that has taken place. I mean, there's got to be people in your life, those of you who are listening to this, who this could be literally life-saving, not just life-changing, but it could save their, just like it did with you, Danny. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I will say, you don't need to be sick to access this, right? It's a potent neuroanti-inflammatory. It increases neuroplasticity. In one study in February from Northeastern, it actually broke up tau proteins, the presence of tau proteins in female rats in an FDA-validated model. So there's a lot, but yeah, it's really exciting, and I appreciate you having us on and on this platform and talking about it.
You got it, and so nice having you guys here. We'll want to do this again, and once things are launched. And for those of you who love the show, make sure you share this with your friends, family, and loved ones. Danny, Jeremy, so good having you on. Thanks again for being part of Ageless Future.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Regan.